Thank you all for joining us for our first SICSS-Howard Mathematica Roundtable entitled Getting the Most Out of SICSS, a roundtable discussion with SICSS alumni of color. During these Real Talk Roundtable sessions, our hosting organizations, Howard, Mathematica, and SICSS, will discuss the experiences of people of color within their institutions and offer tips and tricks for success. In the case of our SICSS panel today, I will be moderating a discussion between 4 alumni of color from 6 locations in 2018, 2019, and 2020. They represent 6 locations that were hosted in person and virtual, 6 locations that were at both our main host sites, either Princeton or Duke, and 1 international institution, Stellenbosch in South Africa. 2 of us have served as local organizers, 1 in the Bay Area and 1 at Howard, and I know at least 1 person here is thinking about submitting an application to found a new site next year. We have a lot to talk about, but if you don't have your lunch, please go ahead and hit pause. For those of you with food and beverage in hand, let's get started. I'll begin by introducing our panelists. First, and I'm not sure if he's joined us yet. Jay, are you there? Well, hopefully Jay will join us soon. Dr. Jay Yun Kim, SICSS Princeton 2019, co-organizer of Bay SICSS 2020 also, is a computational social scientist studying power, inequality, and resistance. He will be an assistant research scholar at the SNF Angora Institute at Johns Hopkins University between July and December 2021. And then in 2022, he will join KDI School of Public Policy and Management as an assistant professor. He is a recent PhD, snaps to that, got his degree in political science from UC Berkeley in May 2021. We'll move on to Zanel Munyikwa. She's a PhD candidate in management science and information technology at MIT Sloan School of Management. She uses causal inference and machine learning techniques to study the digital economy. A lot of exciting things to hear from Zanel, very excited. Demetrius Murphy. Oh, I should mention Zanel was part of SICSS Duke 2018. So she represents, she is the eldest stateswoman amongst us, having gone to the first 6 partner sites. Demetrius Murphy, SICSS Duke 2020. Demetrius is a PhD student in the Department of Sociology at the University of Southern California. His research interests lie in the areas of race and ethnicity, economic sociology, and urban sociology, focusing in particular on the Black middle class, entrepreneurship, and migration in the United States and Brazil. I believe also he has a penchant for Black Twitter. There has been a lot of discussion about research projects on Black Twitter, so I'm gonna throw that out there for folks to pick his brain. He's got a big brain. Both of our speakers, all of our speakers have got big brains. Malebo, SICSS Stellenbosch 2020, our only international participant in this panel. Very excited she's joining us. She is the person I'm hoping will found a site next year. She is a PhD candidate in information systems at the University of Cape Town. We're so appreciative of her presence, especially with load sharing and issues with power there. It has been a challenge, but she is present. Her current research project investigates the relationship between technology and society. She's also interested in the intersection of technology, art, and design. And finally, I will introduce myself. My name is Nanette Coleman. I will be the moderator of this esteemed panel, SICSS Princeton 2019, along with Jay, organizer of the SICSS-Howard Mathematica 2021 site and the never fielded 2020 site because of the pandemic. I am a PhD candidate in the sociology department at the University of California, Berkeley, and a UC National Lab in Residence graduate fellow at Los Alamos Lab for the next 3 years. My research sits at the intersection of the sociology of culture and organizations and focuses on cybersecurity, surveillance, and privacy in the US context. I am so excited to be moderating this panel. Let's go ahead and jump in with some questions. I would also encourage all of you to raise your hands now that I know how to do that amongst the audience when you have questions. Also, I'll kick us off with a few. So I'd like to start with, and feel free to just jump in when you want to take it. I'd love to know what drew you to SICSS as an institution. What made you want to take the 2-week plunge? And then can you talk a little bit about your greatest rewards and challenges of participating in SICSS? Who would like to start us off? Feel free to just unmute yourself and begin. Demetrius is smiling. Demetrius is smiling, so I'll volunteer him to go first. Go ahead.
All right, so I'll take the first stab at this. So the question was, what drew me to SICSS? I was completing my first year at USC, and I was really interested in questions of Black travelers, Instagram, and how to use that data from Instagram. And I really didn't know how to go about getting the data. I didn't really know the latest techniques on analyzing photos. I really didn't know much, right? But I was in a course and my professor kept talking about computational social science. And we were looking very heavily at textual analysis. And he was like, well, you could do the Summer Institute and it'll teach you all these new techniques. So I applied really hoping to do something around social media data, right? And then once I actually attended SICSS, my mind was just blown, right? There were all these different avenues you could go down. There was all these different ways you could approach data. And surprisingly, there wasn't that much information on really how to use or analyze images and videos that well yet. So what I went for really wasn't captured in the way that I thought it would be, but it opened up so many new possibilities for me. So yeah, so I'll stop there.
I believe Zanel unmuted there too. Zanel, would you like to jump in?
Sure. Yeah. So I also did SICSS during my first year, after my first year, and I was really attracted to it because, well, one, I went to the Duke site and I was a Duke alum, and I was like, yeah, I want to go back to Duke. I've been there for 2 years, and I was really excited about the idea. I just felt like there was really nothing else like this kind of immersion with other people who are researchers and being there, you know, every day, you know, meeting people from school all around the country. So what really had drawn me to it was kind of the aspect of kind of building a network, building a community of people who were doing similar research that weren't. So I'm in information systems and like interact with people who are in economics, but you know, it was really appealing to interact with people who were like thinking about the same questions, but from all these different disciplinary kind of vantage points. And I guess the second question you'd asked was, you know, what were the greatest challenges? The greatest challenge is that it's like very immersive. It's 2 weeks, and you know, you're still a PhD student, and you still may or may not have responsibilities outside of doing SICSS. And so, kind of the challenge is, you know, kind of trying to get the most out of SICSS while also kind of balancing, like, you know, making sure like any other outside responsibilities you have, you know, as a PhD student are like, you know, supported, making sure your advisor knows where you are, those kinds of things. So that was kind of, you know, a challenge that comes with like the awesomeness of this like immersive kind of opportunity.
And I'm going to continue around the horn to Malebo, but before I do, I just want to amplify what Zanel said. So I think especially as Black PhD students, we tend to have so many opportunities presented with us and so many things we want to do. And it can be difficult. I know I'm pulled in multiple directions this week, and I know all of our participants are as well. And all we're trying to do is the best that we can. So thank you for that, Zanel. I think that's a beautiful contribution. Malebo, how about you?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me here. Well, I've always been interested in interdisciplinary work, but when you are based at the university, it's really difficult to get those opportunities to talk to colleagues from other disciplines, to talk about what you're interested in. I worked for Wits University for a while, and I had the opportunity to teach in 3 different disciplines, in the engineering school, in the accounting school, and international relations, which is social science. And just like Matt talks about this half glass, half full way of seeing the world, it was really difficult for me to try and find, you know, that intersection, because I always understood that if you're going to think about one area, it's always interesting to bring in other areas. And that's when I came across SICSS, and then I saw this program that brings in tech and society, because my PhD is in information systems. And I thought, in my discipline itself, we always say we are interdisciplinary, but the minute we are very positivist, but the minute you want to talk about feminism or racial relations or equity, it's always like, oh, you know, that's not our area. So it was interesting for me to see a program that's going to merge my both interests, which is tech and society, and also meet a different community that's not just from my discipline. So when I joined SICSS, I was part of the 2020 Stellenbosch program, the summer school. Well, it was winter this side because I'm in South Africa, but it was called summer school. I got to interact with colleagues from mathematics, from history, from art, and we got to meet each other's work. So I think for me, that really fulfilled me. More than anything, it was about building a community. And that was the reward, building the community beyond the 2 weeks, just like Zanele, where she says that it was really intense because we just had the lockdown. The pandemic had just broken in March in South Africa, and our lockdown was really, really intense. We couldn't even like peek out the window. That's how intense it was. And everybody was getting on Zoom, and you were getting invited left, right, and center. And I remember I had like 10 conferences at the same time, and SICSS was one of them. And I think that was what was overwhelming for me, trying to do all these things at once, because the online community was so exciting. But what was rewarding was just the community that I built, the connects, the networks that I'm still in touch with today. Yeah.
Jay?
First of all, thank you for having me. I got some technical issue in the morning, and I realized that partly is because my 3-year-old came into the room and then did something to my computer and like unplugged all of their devices, like including my microphone. So I need to find out where's the microphone and then the stuff. Anyway, so I joined SICSS in 2019 for the Princeton location. So I'm also SICSS alum. So in the same year, I participated SICSS as Nani and other people. And what drew me to SICSS is it's a breadth and depth. So if you join SICSS, one thing you're going to realize is that people come from all kinds of backgrounds. I mean, all race, nationalities, of gender, and not only about demographic background, I'm talking about, more about academic disciplines and their trainings and so on. So even you could talk a lot about interdisciplinary approach on campus. So I came from Berkeley. I received my PhD there. It's mostly like I go to if I'm a game theorist, I go to a meeting that's like a bunch of economists, business scholars, and political scientists, and we talk about or put my model. But because we are from the different disciplines, it's interdisciplinary, maybe similar to the qualitative side. But in SICSS, like we got a conversation between computer scientists and ethnographer. Oh yeah, this is nearly cool, and like you guys are doing nearly interdisciplinary, like nearly like actually building bridges across disciplines. That's really cool. And the other thing I really like about SICSS is this is a very open and inclusive community, and it's as far as I experienced it. So what I mean is like, so I made so many friends from this SICSS community over the past 3 years. And published the papers, doing the project together. So last year, actually, I co-organized SICSS in the Bay Area, both by Stanford and Berkeley, with the 2 friends of mine. They also went to SICSS together. So this is a great program to build your network, also build your community, and learn and grow together.
Let's circle back to the question that Zanel kicked off for us with. What have been the greatest challenges and biggest rewards for attending SICSS? So I think we've heard some rewards. So can we jump into challenges?
I'll start. I think one big challenge is it's all good and exciting to come onto the program and know that you're going to meet colleagues from different disciplines and you're going to be working with them. But we all come with our different knowledge systems, right? And when you are working with people that think differently from you personally and think differently from your discipline, it can get a little bit difficult. So for me, I thought I was really open-minded until I heard somebody's, worldview, or until I heard somebody's disciplinary view. And it was just about having to find a way that I have to just put all my inhibitions down and say, coming to this program, I don't know as much as I thought I did, because I thought I have research on lock, but when you hear somebody else talk about their background, when you hear somebody else talk about the way that they do that they follow research, it kind of challenges you. So for me, that was one of the biggest challenges for me, to just say, I'm here to learn, and I'm going to put all my years' experiences behind me. The second challenge was also not giving the summer school enough time. I took on too many things, just like Zainel. I took on too many things. I was on too many panels outside of the SICSS program. So I thought that I would be able to manage it. And because it was online, it was the first time that we were really experimenting with this online platform. It was really difficult to get into. So I suffered from a lot of Zoom fatigue, as they call it. And my third challenge was being all the way from South Africa. It was really difficult. And I think this is more of a contextual challenge, a South African or African challenge, where the time zones were so different that the only time to network was within South Africa. And then the festival that happened with SICSS, the hours were not really accommodative to us, whereas you'd had to stay up to like 2 a.m., 3 a.m. to catch the festival. And I think a lot of my colleagues missed the festivals because of all the Zoom sessions that we were attending. So by the time the festival sessions were on, a lot of them couldn't attend. I think I attended a few, and that's where I actually met Nanyet, because I stayed up for the sessions. But I think maybe next time we'll get to that. But for me, those three were the biggest challenges for me when I was doing the SICSS program last year.
Yeah, Jay, Demetrius, go for it. Sorry.
So for me, one of the biggest challenges was I came as a qualitative researcher, right? And I was just dipping my toes into quantitative work. And so there was a lot of stuff I just didn't know, right? And then it is overwhelming these 2 weeks, because really it's condensed down to 1 week, and you learn about ethics, you learn about surveys, you learn about textual analysis, right? And depending on your levels in R, and depending on your levels in Python, it's like a lot to take in, and you want to take it all in, but it can be rather overwhelming. So the best thing that I can say for dealing with that is just to simply take notes on where all the resources are, right? And then go back to them, right? Go back to it when you can really breathe and fully digest it, is one thing that really helped with that challenge of it just being overwhelming, particularly if you're not coming from a very quantitative background. And then the other thing that I think was an interesting challenge was, I'll just lay my cards on the table. My research is concerned about Black folks, right? Interested in how Black folks move and exist and live in the world. And so SICSS doesn't necessarily have a particular worldview when it comes to what you study, right? They say you can study anything, but you don't see many examples of people specifically studying Black folks, right? Or like see really robust projects of people looking at Black folks. There are definitely exceptions, right? I think Dean Freeland's work is a huge exception. If you all haven't seen it, check his work out. But to ask the questions about Black folks and specifically say, no, this is what I'm interested in, kind of push, I would say, my site in interesting directions, because it made people ask questions that they typically wouldn't do, right? Or it made people ask questions around areas that they haven't really thought deeply about. So that was fun, but it was also challenging too, from the standpoint, I didn't fully know the tools. So I didn't know what was completely within the realm of questions you could ask. So yeah, so I would say that was also a challenge for me.
Jay?
Yeah. Okay. So challenges. So let me talk about challenges in two different ways, because I was a participant in 2019 and I was organizer in 2020. 2 years 2021, right? So 2020 last year. So I can talk about my experience from both perspectives. So from the participant perspective, I think to me the challenging aspect was actually, so because at that time it was physical, the dormitory. So actually Nadia and Bruce complained a lot about Princeton dormitory. We are too old to live in the space for 2 weeks. But actually the most challenging part, yeah, there are many sessions and there are many things you need to do. But one thing I think you need to think about that is kind of, okay, I'm going to be exposed to a variety of tools and perspectives, but that does not mean you need to excel in every method that you're going to run. So like, okay, I'm going to see many options, but you need to think about what are the things that I'm going to focus on, I'm going to progress in the years to come. So that's what I was thinking in 2019. And for the 2020, when I was organizer, I see that Zoom fatigue was a real problem. And so one thing we did a lot for that, because we recognize the problem, is there are two things we did. One is we did receiving feedback every day so that we can incorporate whatever problems that participants are having. And the other one we did is we made a very active Slack channel. So people talking about whatever things they come across their mind all the time on Slack, especially about their projects, their research, and so on. And of course, like what Nani and I found that one of the most amazing things about 60 is that we got a breakfast and lunch and dinner time where you can sit with just random people and talk about your research like for 1 or 2 hours. So through those those opportunities, I found my 3 co-authors and then 2 co-organizers and so many other amazing people. So they are, I think, like, so it's a kind of glass half full, half empty kind of issues, whether you can see this as opportunity or a challenge. But this is obviously change, but there's some like one way you can turn that into opportunity and then use it to advance your learning and networking.
Thank you all. So our next question, if I can find my document. Let's see, there it is. So can you talk a little bit about how participating in SICSS has shaped your career and or your research afterwards? I know there are papers that have come out of this work, collaborations that have come out of this work, friendships that have come out of this work. And I encourage you to talk about those things or any other ways that it's sort of shaped your career and your research. Who'd like to go ahead and go first? I'm happy to volunteer somebody. Zanelle, we haven't heard from you in a bit. You wanna start us off?
Sure. Yeah. So I would say a number of ways. So one thing is when I was at SICSS, I followed a bunch of people on Twitter, and outside of, we formed a research project during the second week, and I'm close with those people, and we're continue to work on that project, and they've served as really great mentors to me. But in addition to that, I've really gotten a lot out of following a bunch of people on SICSS on Twitter, and just really being able to be more keyed into how their disciplines are talking about things, important things happening in their disciplines, like opportunities in their kind of in their research areas, through kind of being connected to them that way. So I think that has like kind of allowed me to even research questions I'm working on, or many of the things that I work on kind of end up in like the popular press in terms of the topic, and kind of seeing how communication scholars talking about this, who are they following, what are they saying, has like really expanded the way I'm able to like ask questions, think about questions. That yeah, that's really cool. It's also kind of overwhelming, it's like, oh, there's all these different angles on this paper I'm writing, but it's also really exciting. And I guess I would say, even during SICSS, as I said, I was a first year, and there was during my program, just a range of where people were. So I was a first year. There are people who were at the end of their PhD submitting their dissertations, and that was in some ways challenging, because it kind of felt like, oh, like I don't even know what my research is completely, like you've written a whole dissertation, like how am I going to contribute? But what I did was like really like leaned into the fact that like I'm a first year. And so, there was a lot of things I knew a lot about because I had a computer science undergrad degree. I was coming from computational background, but the things I didn't know anything about, like, doing an NDA with a company, like, the process of like how we're going to submit to the journal. I was just very much upfront about like, you guys know more about this than me. Like, I want to learn about it. And that's really, yeah. So that has really helped me, because the things I learned as a first year that some people wouldn't have learned. Yeah. Things I learned as a first year because I was willing to ask these people later on in their degree. And that I probably would have had access to in that like intensive way. That's been really helpful now as somebody who's now starting as a fifth year.
Okay, I'll go. Uh, for me, there's been many rewards and many ways that SICSS has shaped my career and many projects that have come out. But I think I'll just mention the two that's really close to my heart. So the first one is I'm interested in how my work in the academy impacts the community and how I can create accessible knowledge, like accessible work to the community. And so South Africa is really, I don't know how it is in other countries, but South Africa is really on the boom talking about the fourth industrial revolution, and artificial intelligence is on everyone's tip of everyone's lips. And so everyone is just talking about how technology impacts society, which was really great because then SICSS allowed me to think deeply about the issues of ethics, right? Because whenever we talk about technology, we talk about efficiency, we talk about how it's going to impact development, and we get excited. South Africa totally gets excited, wants to be a world player, wants to be in the front runs. And so many times when we think about technology, we think about, oh, we need to be in with the big leagues, and we can ignore issues such as our unemployment rate and our poverty rate, which is like over half of our population lives in poverty, and our unemployment rate is really terrible. And so SICSS has helped us to really think about those issues, about ethical issues, before you go on and think about efficiency and think about development where it doesn't factor humans and how they exist in society. You know, what does that mean for our society? So that's helped me quite a bit articulate these issues in the public. So because I've been able to articulate them better, and because I've been able to study Twitter, data from Twitter, think about how feminists work on Twitter, how feminists rally and organize on Twitter, I've been able to work with different organizations when they plan their projects, to be part of their panels, etc. And also to pay it forward, to say, you know, there's different ways that we can think of research. There's different ways that we can think of data, you know, in terms of causal. And so that's been really impactful in my work. The second one is, Naniette mentioned this, that while I was actually watching her, or, you know, just seeing her organize this program, so I did a Stellenbosch 2020 Stellenbosch, and Stellenbosch University, just like University of Cape Town, is what we deem a previously white university in South Africa, right? And so when we were recruited to be part of the SICSS program, yes, there was a diversity in terms of the participants, those who attended, but those who were teaching really were white men. All of them were white men. And one of the questions that I always brought up is, when am I going to see myself in these kind of tech programs? And for me, watching just, it started last year, listening to Naniette bring up these issues, because these were issues that I brought up. It's like, what about the Black people, you know? And watching just Naniette do her work last year and do her work this year, I was like, I want to bring SICSS to South Africa, but I know we've had UCT, we've had Stellenbosch, but I want to bring it to Johannesburg, where people see people who look like them actually running these programs. So for me, I am excited. I can't wait for 2022 when I say there's a SICSS Johannesburg organized by Malebo Sipodi, you know? So yeah. And I think that's really important, because even the people that we're going to recruit, we're thinking about how do people's research or knowledge production impact the community? How can they translate it to the community? Yeah.
Yeah, so I can jump in and say something quickly. So based off my SICSS experience, I was fortunate to do like the preliminary like seed project in the second week. And then based off that research, a colleague, Robin Lee from Princeton University, we applied for funding and received a small grant for $3,000. Well, they weren't dollars, they were Mechanical Turk coins, I guess is the correct way to call them. But we basically got some money to do a survey experiment with Mechanical Turk. And so that is still in the work. So that was like a collaborative project that came out of my SICSS experience. In addition to that, I was also pulled into the mathematical sociology ASA section. So this section was nowhere on my radar. So anyone who's a sociologist who are interested in some of these questions raised over this 2-week time frame, you should definitely check that section out. And then finally, with my own work, I further developed a project that was looking at the hashtag Black Lives Matter in Brazil and kind of the significance of the hashtag and how it's used and how it works in Brazil. So all of that came out of my time at SICSS. So I'm definitely appreciative of the experience and the folks around me.
Yeah, seems I'm the next one, according to Nanya. So when I was a participant at SICSS 2019, I took notes, and then in the note I wrote down two things. One is what I'm inspired, actually three things: what I'm inspired, what I'm gonna do, and whom I'm gonna do this together. And for the past 3 years, I think I've done most of the things I've written down. So one thing I did is before the SICSS, when I was thinking about research, I'm mostly thinking about just writing papers and publishing them. Then I realized that from the SICSS, there are people who develop software and then sharing the software that enabling other people to the research they do something like that. So I developed 5 research software so far, and then one is a nearly large one, and then we are preparing to submit it to a journal for that. So it's about getting the big data for understanding civil society in the United States. So that's also related to my postdoc position at Johns Hopkins. So I've been so I'm a Berkeley PhD, but I've been pre-doc at Hopkins and now transitioning into postdoc, and that's the role I play there. So actually it built my career, and so far I'm almost publishing one paper because it's a final revision, and then there are 2 more papers under review, all coming out of the SICSS, and there's one paper work in progress. So far there are 4 papers coming out of the SICSS, and there are actually more papers coming out because those people who have collaborated, we decided that we actually a good team, so we need to continue work. So we are now thinking and discussing about the next project. So I guess there will be many projects coming out of this SICSS experience. And also we co-organized Base 6 last year, and then the Base 6 to me is very special because when we are so one of the things we're going to learn from SICSS is collaboration. So not only collaboration, of course, these are different disciplines, but also collaboration between researchers and industry partners and community partners. And what we want to do is, okay, Bay Area has lots of nonprofit organizations having marginalized communities. Let's give an opportunity for researchers from Stanford, Berkeley, or other institutions on the West Coast to collaborate with, a nonprofit organization so that they can make a direct impact on, health, education, whatever they care about, over the 3 weeks in the summer. So, so to me, it's a fantastic. So I recommend you to do the same thing or similar things like that. What are you inspired? And what is your specific goal, and then when you want to accomplish that, and then whom would be ideal partner to do that?
I am going to ask our speakers to drop their emails and Twitter handles in the chat box while I ask my last question, so we make sure that you all have access to them after this event. If you haven't seen the chat box, you all are getting quite a bit of happy attention in the chat box. Everybody's enjoying your contributions, and I am very thankful for all of your contributions. So my final question before I turn it around to our participants to ask you questions is about advice. Advice you wish you were given as a SICSS attendee, advice that you want to give these SICSS attendees. And I know based on the conversations I've heard in this space so far, there's a lot of people who are interested in advice on collaboration, how you got funds, how you would position yourself this week to put together a project that might be funded. Our site has funds available, but there's also the larger funding pool in the SICSS family. So we're looking for advice. So why don't you share some of your advice, and then we'll open it up to the floor. So who would like to kick us off from the panel?
I can volunteer and go first. So when it comes to funding, so the project we started for the in 2019 for the Princeton location, we got received grant from Los Angeles Foundation, where it's around like $6,000, and then we are doing a series of experiments using the money. So there, and then the other nearly nice, but aside from the nearly nice thing about SICSS and then our funding is, we are going to meet lots of people from different backgrounds. What that means is those people know fundings, grants you've never known before. Oh, there is like money for studying like digital media about race. I didn't recognize that, but now I have that information. So for the next cycle, maybe I can apply for that. You know, like for that funding program. So maybe one thing good for you can do is like collectively you can create a Access spreadsheet and write down the grant programs you are aware, and then so you can share the information so that you can collect. Or maybe the even better thing is you can collectively work together and then proposing a grant to the as a team. Maybe that would be awesome.
So my advice is to just participate as much as you can and ask all the questions that you have and reach out to people, especially like on Slack. Participate, there's office hours, and don't be afraid to go beyond your cohorts of Slack list. And I Googled people, I Googled everyone I saw, all the names I saw, I Googled, and I reached out to a lot of people. So there's a lot of networks, projects that are still in the works. A lot of, hey, we should write a paper together happening. But I think for me, the biggest advice is just ask any question, reach out to anybody, even if it's just an introductory email, just so that you have it in the pipeline. Yeah.
Advice. Okay, so a number of things. So I would echo what Demetrius said about like just writing, like, writing down resources. Like if you can figure out like, this is a place I'm gonna put all my notes for SICSS so that you'll be able to like go back to them. I would also suggest also writing down, if you're not going to reach out to them this week, writing down people that you want to reach out to in the future. Because, one thing that I've seen just repeatedly is really like, people I met at SICSS or, talked to briefly at SICSS just coming up again in other conferences, other like, situations. And it's like, it's really cool to feel it's kind of part of that like community building feeling of like, I'm seeing these same people, I kind of know more and more about their work. And it's great to be able to, especially for kind of higher profile people, to be like, oh yeah, like you came to SICSS, you talked about this, and to be able to just have that written down in your notebook, like, oh yeah, I know this is a person I've said before I want to meet, I'm going to meet this person. That's really helpful. And then I think the other thing is, I guess, think about, what is it for you, for kind of what your research interests are? What is it that, like, if you could figure out, like, Danny had said, set your intentions, if you could figure out, what you want to get out of SICSS specifically, say for your career goals, then you can really kind of seek out the people during this 2 weeks that kind of have those skills or know the resources to be able to do that. So say you're like, I want to do this project about Instagram. We don't have any talks about Instagram, but like, I bet there's somebody here at SICSS who knows about, doing something, a research project on Instagram. And so I think one thing that's really cool, one thing that's really helpful, has been helpful for me, is that, there's tutorials about how to do something, but it can be really helpful to just talk to somebody who's done that same pipeline type of project and know like, these are the pitfalls. And so you can find somebody who is doing something similar to what you're trying to do. That can be really helpful.
Yeah, so I'll echo pretty much everything that was already said. Network. This cohort at Howard Mathematica is brilliant, right? And so one of the key things that I think you all should really, okay, recording in progress. All right, so make sure you know the other people that are at your SICSS, right? Like, what is their current research? What are their interests moving forward? And then, right, so it's weird doing this on Zoom. It's just harder to build community on Zoom and to maintain this community after Zoom because you never actually meet anyone in person. And so with things changing and hopefully the world opening back up, you will have an opportunity to meet, but make sure you maintain this community that is here. Now, I'm not suggesting that all, what is it, 24, 25 people that participate in Howard 6 are going to be besties. I don't see that being realistic, but it would be amazing if a few of you all definitely stayed in contact afterwards. And like one of the other participants on the panel said, also reach out to the other 6 sites, right? So the beautiful thing about being a part of 6, no matter which site that you're in, you're all like 6, like the larger 6. So you can cold email people, you can like at them on Twitter or however you get in contact with people, and people are very receptive to you saying, hey, I did 6 whatever, and I'm interested in what you're doing. Would you be willing to talk with me or chat with me? I think it's a perfect way to get the most out of this and to get the most going for it. But when I say like this cohort is brilliant, several of the people in this cohort I've cited in my work, right? And so to see you all just sitting together is like, wow, right? So definitely make sure you all take full advantage of just having these dope folks around y'all.
All right, we're going to open it up to questions. I see you, Todd. Go ahead and turn on your camera and ask your question.
Hi, everyone, thank you so much for being here. Definitely took a lot of notes as there were so many great nuggets. I had a question about the process of collaboration, and specifically if you've collaborated with people at very different stages, because I'm a first year, and so I'm thinking about how, in your experience, you were able to kind of coordinate different timelines, whether the collaboration was something that like started during 6 and just like continue right into the summer, or if you guys started the project and set specific checkpoints to loop back to that project. Just kind of how you kept the ball in the air, as everyone's like, some people are probably on their tenure track, some people are teaching, and at all different stages.
So for the project that we during 6 got funding for in the second week, it was I was a first year. There was somebody who was a 4th year, somebody who was a 4th year, somebody who was a 5th year, and then somebody who was starting a faculty position. Those numbers might not be exactly right, but so this was, I guess, 4 years ago, 3 years ago. And so, yes, it is a challenge that everybody's at different stages of their career and also have like different kind of big milestones. So, when you're, so that has meant that it's basically taken some like a lot of like communication. It's basically like, I'm teaching this semester, like I'm going to be dialed down, or like I'm taking calls this semester, I'm going to be dialed down. And so, I think I think from my experience, like 2 things that are valuable is that kind of communication, and also like, kind of having, what is our like big goal dream paper, and like what are the like these intermediate like deliverables or steps that we want to have before that kind of keep this thing up in the air. And so one thing that we did was we got funding for the second week, and then we got additional funding that kind of expanded the project. But I think, I guess to basically say, that is a challenge, and the project that I'm working on after 6 has been kind of the past 3 years of kind of dialing up and dialing down as we can.
Yeah, so I had the benefit, I guess is the best way to say it, of working with another first year student. So that meant there was a lot of growing pains, right? And we're still trying to figure it out. But I think the biggest thing, as was just said, communication, right? Being very transparent on what you can do, what you can't do, and then setting kind of the steps that you need to accomplish. But yeah, it really matters who you're working with and the stage they are in their career. The benefit of us both being first years, we have time, if you will, right? So there's no particular rush to get it done. But that could also be a downside of us both being first years, because there's really no imperative to get this work out anytime soon. So
we have another question. I believe it's Jeremy. and then Yash. Jeremy, go ahead and unmute yourself and turn on your camera.
Thank you all so much. This has been a great panel. I feel like I've learned so much. One thing that I heard you all speak about is like kind of like that we're getting a lot of information where, you know, somewhat similar, like kind of like a water hose kind of analogy of like, you know, there's so much that we're getting. I guess the one thing that I guess my question is more so like, how do we discern which kind of techniques or data analysis techniques that we'll be taking in, and like how we should be using them? I think that's the thing. I know we could always take notes and just kind of see what that looks like, but like when does that like that light kind of turn on? Like, oh yeah, this is what I should probably do to look at my data, or just thinking about, because there's just so much that we're getting, and I just feel like I'm just wondering, you know, it's all great stuff, but I'm just, you know, applying it is also something that I'm interested of how you all were able to, you know, sit down to see what you needed and what you didn't.
I think for me, as Daniela said earlier, when you make notes, because it's a lot to take in, and so and you're not going to learn everything, you know, in those 2 weeks. You're going to struggle with a lot of things. Just creating a resource list of things to go back to that really hit, like, because when you're working through stuff, you know, stuff will trigger. You will get triggered by certain kind of skills or techniques or knowledge that you're learning, and it's always to make notes of them to go back. But one of the things that happened with our cohort is, or our site, is we were encouraged to bring our own projects, the research projects that we were working in, whether you were a postdoc or a PhD. There were times where we were actually paid up to talk about our projects, and then we were put in separate rooms and then to give back, to give feedback. So that also helped a lot to listen to how we took that day's exercise and also incorporated it in the different projects that we're working in. So it does get overwhelming. And there was a time where I felt like I was so behind. I didn't know what was going on, and especially with the text analysis, you know. But then when I came back to it after the 2 weeks and went through it and tried to make it as case as possible, like not just read it as learning, but also try and apply it immediately. I found, okay, fine, these are my strong points. These are definitely not my strong points. But I think trying to work on live cases, or I don't know what you call them, but we called them cases, where you bring in projects in our discussions and we try and talk about those projects in our spare time, you know, how we were grouped. So that helped a lot on my side.
We have another question from Yesh, one of our first years. So we've got first year power happening here. There's at least 3 first years. So Yesh, you want to close us out with our final question before your break?
Thank you so much, Nanette. And I know I only have 2 minutes, so I'll be super fast. I was wondering, you all mentioned about having clear intentions in communication and expectations, and also about interdisciplinary and how people perceive interdisciplinary research. I was wondering, in your research and journeys, how do you decide which conferences or publications to aim for when you're kind of going through this? Am I a sociologist? Am I a technology person? Am I a mix? Like, where will my research be accepted? Or what is prestige or citations, and how that works for interdisciplinary researchers, especially when we're talking about topics that a big part of academia does not want to talk about or acknowledge.
Can I take this? If you don't volunteer, okay, good. So I present published papers in both political science, is kind of social science domain, and also computational social science, like ICWSM. It's an international conference for social media and web data, web conference. So so you can, so the first thing is you can publish and present papers in whatever venues you want. So there's nobody complaining about it. But the question is like, I think there's more bad career choice. So depending on where you publish papers, you build different kinds of reputations. and then you are building like different kinds of audiences. So that's something that I think the people are worried or concerned about. And to me, I think that's a real issue. So so both in the SICSS location I participated in, also the I think this year we have the SICSS Festival, and then when people are talking about the career passes, I think they're definitely going to talk about this issue as well, because computational scientists tend to publish and present and publish their papers in various venues. So my my perspective is not like there's no general advice. The way I think about this, it depends whether you want to be in academia. Also, if you want the academia, whether you want to be in a traditional department or you're gonna be like in a professional school, or so what kind of, so like if you just say academia, but it's very vague description, but there are different kinds of schools and programs and departments and cultures. So exactly what kind of environment you wanna be, and then where you can thrive. So that's the question I think you need to ask yourself. So before you thinking about your publication options, conference options, I think that's something that you should ask yourself, and then maybe you want to discuss with your colleagues and other advisors is what kind of academic structure and environment you want to be in.
Thank you so much to our panelists, Malebo, Jay, Zanel, Demetrius. They represent, by their attendance at our various SICSSs, the almost the entire history of SICSS. These are elder statespeople here. These are organizers. These are people who are doing exceptional work in computational social science and are doing so while setting intentions, being clear on boundaries and balance. These are people that you should aspire to collaborate with, connect with, and emulate. So thank you all to our panelists. We are going to send folks out on a break now. You get 30 minutes, make good use of it. Eat, drink, be merry, maybe write to each other on Slack, set up a Black Twitter section, okay? Thank you all, and we'll see you in half an hour. See you soon, thank you. Thank you all for watching. For more information on SICSS-Howard Mathematica, visit our website, follow us on social media, and join our email list.